Wall Street's biggest banks need to be broken up. We all know this. And there's an excellent column in truthdig.com that was written by Robert Reich, who is a professor of public policy at UC Berkeley. He goes into this kind of why we've gotten to this place, and I'll touch on it, and why it needs to be broken up. And unless we get, as he says in the end of this article, and I've talked about this before, which is unless we get a real progressive president in the White House, the only way this is going to happen is, sadly, is if there's another financial collapse. Is the only thing that people might like rise up and say we've had enough and actually start paying attention. Because here's what happened. So Wednesday, the federal bank regulators proposed to allow Wall Street more freedom to make riskier bets with federally insured bank deposits, such as the money in your checking and savings accounts. So just the riskier bets, if you're not familiar. So what normally what a bank does, let's say it has whatever, it has $10 million in actual cash deposits, right? So then it makes loans against that, and usually banks conservatively do 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, meaning they'll loan out $30 million when they only have $10 million of actual capital, but that's reasonable, right? And going into the last recession in 2007 and beginning of 2008, banks were doing like 10-to-1, 15-to-1. It was nuts. It was nuts. And they're doing this. This is happening again, and now they're trying to pass legislation to do even more of it. The proposal watered down the so-called Volcker rule, named after former Fed Chair Paul Volcker, who proposed it. The Volcker rule was part of the Dodd-Frank Act passed after the near meltdown of Wall Street in 2008 in order to prevent future meltdowns. Barely did anything in that. The Volcker rule is a watered-down version of the 1930s Glass-Steagall Act, which was enacted in response to the great crash of 1929. Glass-Steagall, who got rid of that in 1999? Bill Clinton. Billy Bill, Billy Bob, Billy Bill Bell. What happened was Wall Street saw opportunities to make lots of money by betting on stocks, bonds, and derivatives, bets on bets. And in 1999, they got Bill Clinton and Republican Congress to repeal Glass-Steagall. 9 years later, Wall Street had to be bailed out, and millions of Americans lost their savings, their jobs, and their homes. Why didn't America simply just reinstate Glass-Steagall after the 2008 crisis? Because too much money was at stake. Wall Street was intent on keeping the door open to making bets with commercial deposits, so instead of Glass-Steagall, we got the Volcker rule. Almost 300 pages of regulatory mumbo-jumbo riddled with exemptions and loopholes. More bullshit to say, wait, tough, so this will never happen again. It's going to happen again. The banks can do whatever they want. They took our tax money that was given to them by the politicians that they paid for, that don't work for us, bail them out. Obama let this happen. Bush let this happen. All your Republican and Democratic representatives let this happen. They all let it happen. Right? But now, the loopholes and regulation and exemptions, are about to get even bigger until they swallow up the Volcker rule altogether. If the latest proposal goes through, we'll be nearly back to where we were before the crash of 2008. They want to get us back to the next pre-crash levels, if we're not there already. Right? Since the 2008 financial crisis, Europe has been more aggressive than the United States in clamping down on banks headquartered there. Britain has required its banks to have higher capital reserves than are far contemplated in the United States. You got to actually have the money. The real reason Wall Street has spent huge sums to try to water down the Volcker rule is that far vaster sums can be made if the rule is out of the way. This is a great line. If you took the greed out of Wall Street, all you'd have left is pavement. They're so greedy, they're so awful, they don't care that they're going to ruin millions of more people's lives again. As a result of all consolidations brought on by Wall Street bailout, the biggest banks today are bigger and have more clout than ever. They and their clients know with certainty they will be bailed out if they get into trouble, which is true. They got bailed out under Obama. You better bet your sweet ass they'll get bailed out over Trump and these Republican jackwagons that control the House and the Senate, because the Democrats roll over and there's no resistance. They're part of this thing. Hillary Clinton, in the speech to Goldman Sachs that she was paid $200,000 for, said, we need to stop this anti-banking sentiment in America. We need to stop it. Great. Thanks, Hillary. Another recession's coming. Good for you. I'm with her. The only answer is to break up the giant banks. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was designed not only to improve economic efficiency by reducing the market power of economic giants like the railroads and oil companies, but also to prevent companies from becoming so large that their political power would undermine democracy. And what this article finishes up with is that if Trump was the actual populist that he claimed to be, he won on a populist campaign. He ran a populist campaign. He also cheated better than Hillary, who was also a cheat. Two filthy, rich, millionaire, baby boomer cheaters. And if we ever had a real populist in the White House that would actually fight for working class people, because this recession is going to hit again, and it's 10 years later, it's going to be brutal. And a bunch of people in this country have never really recovered. I know a lot of like small businesses, like comedy club owners and people like that, who are like, I barely got through the last recession. The lights are still on, but I couldn't sustain another one. So I don't know. It's like the one percenters are just hell-bent on crashing everything. I don't know. Maybe we need another greedy crash to happen before the 2020 election so that a real populist can run for the White House and get in. I'd like to see that. So, and if you'd like to see Ron Placone and I in the Progressive Comedy Tour Leg 2, June 20th through the 24th, we're going to Nashville, Huntsville, Alabama, Asheville, North Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky, and Atlanta, Georgia. If you're in any one of those cities or near there, please come out. It's stand-up comedy. It's political activism. It's like a political rally. We have meet and greets after the show. You get to talk to us and any of the progressive organizations that are showing up there. There might be information. There's organizations you could start to volunteer for. So come out. The links are in below, grahamelwood.com.